Yeah, I think honestly the biggest issue with polygamy, and I think with most of depression anywhere you're going to find, is just the lack of embracement, both self and outer embracement. And so I think what you're looking to do, and just um, kind of telling your story and where you come from, is to help people embrace themselves a little bit more, if anything.
Yes,
I think
for
that's where
sure.
it's most important, where it needs to start, is embracing yourself.
Right. Embracing yourself and to realize that all the emotions that you end up having in life are really what help you to figure out who you really are and who,
Mhm.
and to see that all of those steps, all those trials, and all those things that you put yourself through, because honestly, you're responsible for everything that you go through.
Yeah,
And until you start taking responsibility of that, you don't see what an amazing person that you really are.
yeah. You grow through what you go through.
Yep, 100%. When I was younger, I mean, I was raised in in the polygamist group, and we
Mhm.
were pretty much taught that in order to get to the celestial kingdom, you needed to live polygamy. But I saw a lot of sadness and a lot of struggles with living polygamy. So I really found myself as a teenager struggling with that. Although I did do a lot of activities with the youth, as far as the youth went, we were very connected and we had a lot of fun. They set up lots of youth activities, and being a part of that was important to me.
Yeah.
But I did find myself with an internal struggle with the fact that I didn't want to live that lifestyle. I wanted to find real love in my life. And I didn't see a lot of real love in polygamy. I saw a lot of struggle because that was my perception of life.
Hmm.
So when I was younger, I secretly said to myself, I'm never going to live this way, but I was not sure how to get out of polygamy. Problem is, there's a lot of judgments against people who live polygamy, especially nowadays. It seems like people are a little more open to different lifestyles.
Hmm.
But when I was a child, they weren't so open. And living in a community where I was raised, where there was mostly Mormons, Mormons were very against people living polygamy. So I found myself knowing that I had to keep the way I was raised as a secret. Not only that I need to keep it a secret because people would reject me, but I needed to keep it a secret because we were taught, and my grandfather went to prison for being a polygamist. And my parents ended up moving their kids from one house to the other because one of the children had told the neighbors that we were polygamous, and the cops were called.
Hmm.
So you can see that there was a big fear of that coming about. So they moved the family late at night into a different residence. So knowing that fear and being told those stories as a child, I knew that it was important not to say that I'm from a polygamous child. And that right there caused a lot of conflict within me. Um, so when I finally did decide to be brave enough to step out and tell somebody that I was a polygamous kid, I was quickly rejected. I finally told one of the girls that I worked with, she invited me to go to church with her, and which would have been the Mormon church. So when I told her that I was from a polygamous family, because I felt like I needed to be truthful with her, then she no longer wanted anything to do with me. And then she told everybody else at work, and I was already struggling with my self-esteem anyway. So I found myself running away from the situation more rather than facing it. I couldn't handle the fact that everybody knew and that I felt like I didn't have any friends, and people were talking by my back behind my back instead of asking me questions. So I quit the job and didn't want to work there anymore.
Yeah.
So then after that, I my mom was really concerned about about me. And so she worked out with my aunt for me to go to her house because she was over what we called the girls' class,
Hmm.
to go to her house and have some special meetings for girls from the ages of, I think it was 16 at the point, might have been 17 on up, to learn about the gospel. So I went to those meetings, even though I was too young, they allowed me in. And it was in those meetings that I realized, because I was born into a polygamist family, then it was my right and my duty to become a polygamist. And so, because I was taught that, I felt like I was going against what my bloodline to not be able to not be a polygamist. So I went ahead and decided that this is the way I have to live. But I did make a list of things that I would not put up with when I lived polygamy, because there was some things that I just saw as a young teenager that I did not like. And
Yeah.
that I wanted to be loved, I wanted to be taken care of, I wanted to love, and
Hmm.
I wanted to be friends with anybody who I had a relationship with.
Yeah. I think the thing that, if I were to pinpoint it down, is that a lot of polygamists are missing, whether you're a polygamous child or you're a polygamist, is feeling embraced,
For sure.
mm, both on the outside and inside. It's kind of hard to embrace yourself when you don't feel like you can share yourself with everybody and your surroundings, and let everybody in on where you came from, even because where you came from is important, not necessarily to say who you are, but it at least has a lot of um, connotation on, like, it helps people understand how you are and why you are.
Yes, for sure. I feel like that there is a lot of judgments that people put on others before they really understand where they're coming from. We quickly
Yeah.
jump into being prejudice, or, you know, if you want to call it prejudice,
Yeah.
against other people for something that you don't even understand. In my own life, I listen to people and I watch people make judgments on how somebody is, or a certain section of religion or society or whatever. They quickly put judgments on the group rather than the person. They
Yeah.
don't even give that person a chance, because they're from a polygamous family, because they are in that group of people, then this is how they are. And you
Yeah.
don't even get to know the person before you make that strong judgment.
Yeah. So when did you personally decide for yourself that that was the direction that you were going to head?
I think it was after those classes that I felt like that's where I was going. So I made a really big commitment to myself that when I would watch for the person that I saw take care of their family the way that they should be taken care of.
Okay.
And since I was young, I was taught to always look for the person that I was going to marry,
Hmm.
and I wasn't seeing anybody. Um, so when I had made that decision, then things kind of changed their perspective a little bit for me. And I started to look for somebody that I might be able to fit in their family with.
Hmm.
So, and I felt like I had gained a testimony that this is how I had to live, you know.
Hmm.
Well, I found myself being the oldest of my dad's kids that were left at home.
Hmm.
All of my other sisters had gotten married, so that left me the oldest. And my dad was what they call a council member. And to marry a council member's daughter was supposed to be an honor or whatever. I don't know how they looked at it, because I
Became
never
your
understood it
prize.
even there. Yeah, I was a big prize. So I had a lot of guys at that point asking for me,
Hmm.
asking me to come into their family, asking to court me, They did have to ask my dad first, and then my dad would come to me and say, "Are you, I have this person asking, are you interested in seeing where this goes?" And so I did have a choice in
Okay.
who I dated. It
Let's
wasn't like I would just, had got married off.
That's more than most polygamists have, though, from what I hear
It
and
depends
understand.
on which community you're from and
Mhm.
where you're from. Some have no choice. Some is all the women's choice. The men don't get a choice. The woman says, "I want to come in that family," and the man says, I have to take her." So, there's different ways that polygamous groups live polygamy.
Yeah.
Some work out in the work field constantly. You would never even know that they were in a polygamous group. You would never know. Some of them are not actually in a group. They're called independents, and they live separately, but they still believe that that's how they have to live. And so there's so many sects of polygamous. You can't say this is, like I said, you can't say this is the group. This is what
Yeah.
polygamy is like.
Yeah, for sure. What group did you grow up in?
I grew up in what we called the All Red group,
Okay.
or the RCA.
Okay. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was always like, yeah, she's part of the Thompson group.
Nope.
He met dad through him kind of coming down to the community later on.
He actually started to come to church,
Uh-huh.
and I met him through my uncle who introduced me. And so I was babysitting some of his children,
Hmm.
before I even, decided that that's the direction I was going to go. And so, yeah, so that's kind of how we met, was
Hmm.
through that little channel.
Love at first sight.
Well, you know, love has just different connotations, but I think I didn't really fall in love with him. Um, so that in itself is a long, short story, I guess you could call it. I feel like it starts clear back to the first story that I told you about, deciding, that I had to live polygamy. Um, but I also feel like it's important for people to understand that, um, not all polygamists end up in happy relationships,
Yeah.
but there are people that do live polygamy in good relationships that have taken excellent care of their children and excellent care of their wives, and the wives take excellent care of each other.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's awareness that needs to be made with the fact that a lot of women don't ever take responsibility for themselves, and until they take responsibility for themselves, they won't be in a happy relationship, whether that's in polygamy or whether that's in a normal relationship.
I'd agree. So when so you chose to live polygamy, was there people before dad that you decided to date or tried to date or were like, yeah, sure? Or was it just you were so picky that dad was the only one?
No, I had a lot of people that asked about me coming into their family. I had a couple of situations that were really quite uncomfortable. I had one situation where my mom really wanted me to marry, um, my one of my sister's, um, husband, and I wasn't really interested in him. I was a little bit of a brat. If that person had too big of a feet, if they were not somebody that I thought looked handsome, I was not going to do that to my kids. This is why you turned out as well as you did. So,
Oh.
um, yes. So I was pretty picky in that. Um, my my mom kind of pushed that. He asked for me a couple of times. I told my dad no, I wasn't interested in anybody. So my dad finally told him, I guess I don't know because I wasn't in my dad's shoes, so it kind of,
Mhm.
I don't know the story except for basically what I was told by him, that my dad told him that he could ask me personally, which I don't know if, you know, if that's what my dad said or not. But
Mhm.
I ended up going to the mall with my sister, and when you go to the mall as a teenager, you enjoy the mall.
Back then.
You, yeah, you loved it because you got to go shopping, you got to look at things you would never ever own. You got to, I mean, the mall was everything.
Mhm.
So I walked through the mall and loved it. But my sister was trying to ditch me the entire time I was in the mall. So we finally sat down. There's all these seating spots in the mall, and she sat down there. And then she said, I got to go to the bathroom. And I said, I'll go with you. And she said, no, 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 sit down, you know, stay here. And her husband ended up saying, I need to talk to you. And I knew instantly what was going on. I was like, oh crap. So he told me that my dad had given him permission to ask me personally if I was interested in getting to know him and coming into his family. And I
Yeah.
told him I was not ready for marriage. I was not ready to go out with anybody. Um, and so I just, that's kind of where it left. It made it really awkward for me as a teenager. So we went to go find my sister, and he kind of, I don't remember everything he said, but it felt like it was, will you still pray about me? Will you, you know, and that's kind of what I
Give
have a
it
little
some
bit of.
thought.
Yeah, well, I think that that was even suggested. I really blocked a lot of that out in my life. I don't know why. I couldn't wait to go home. So we left the mall and was grateful to be done with the mall and be out of the car.
And so you first met dad through your uncle.
Hmm.
Was he with your sister?
No, no, he was not. So he was married to his first two wives, and I babysat for him before that. And I had decided that I, you know, he was cute. So he had asked for my older sister, and we had basically through our lives decided that we were going to live together and be best friends forever. Whether that meant that we married different guys or whether we married the same, we were just best friends. So when he asked me, I encouraged her to date him and to go out with him. So she did, and she ended up marrying him. And then after that, then he came and asked for me. So
How long after?
2 years.
Okay. And you said yes right away. No hard to get.
Oh, um, sort of. Um, so when my dad came, when I told my dad no, I wasn't interested in anybody. Um, then when my dad came in and he told me, I know you're really not interested in anybody, but I have, you know, your dad came and asked for me and he told me who it was. I said, oh, wait, um, I am interested in getting to know that family. And he was a little bit taken back, to be totally honest. He kind of said, oh, so you are interested in somebody. So he said, well, then I'll let him know. So he did.
Okay. When did when did wife number 5 come into the picture?
Um, so that was kind of an interesting little story. When I got married, um, on my wedding day, my dad had approached my husband to that there was another woman who was interested in coming into our family.
Was
And
she your dad's daughter too?
yes, in a roundabout way, she was actually my cousin, but her mom married my dad later
After.
after.
Okay.
Well, not after we were married, but
Well,
he married her when
I
she was
understand.
older.
Yeah.
Okay.
After she was born.
Yes. He approached my husband and My husband said he would give it some thought. Now you have to understand, when a woman comes to ask to come into a man's family, it's the family's obligation to take serious thought. Doesn't mean you have to marry them. It
Mhm.
means that you have to consider.
Yeah.
You have to be open-minded and prayerful about it. So um we went out for we went on our anniversary, I mean on our honeymoon, and we kind of went on two different weekends. So I went for a weekend and then we came home. And then I went to live with my with his first wife in her house. And
Hmm.
then I went back on a second weekend to on for kind of a honeymoon. So kind of had a split honeymoon. And then he told me that my dad had um, approached him with this, and I was devastated. I was like, I haven't even settled into this family and you're asking me to consider bringing in another person into my family, into
Yeah.
our family.
So you
And
guys were married for like just a few weeks at this point, right?
yes. Hmm.
Okay.
And he said he wasn't you know he wasn't gonna push this situation, he wasn't gonna consider it right now, but I needed to be prayerful about it, and he would try to be prayerful about it. And so, yeah, that's how that went about.
Okay. Well, I mean, in the end, the answer was yes.
Yeah, she got married about 6 months after I was married.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, I think a good topic to talk about and maybe finish off on for this one is let's talk about how you went from being a pliglet, a polygamous child, to now settling in as a polygamist wife into your new family.
As a young wife,
Yeah, you first just like when you first got in.
when I first got married, us girls were best friends, you
Hmm.
know, and we got along great. I did know.
My sister and wife two more than wife one.
Hmm.
And so, but we hung out a lot. We had a lot of fun. And so when I got married,
Wife one.
was really sweet, and she gave me a bottle of wine, welcomed me, and out non-alcoholic wine, of course.
Hmm.
And she invited me into the family and told me how excited she was to get to know me and that I was a part of the family. That made a big impression on me because she really did honestly care that we became friends. And one of the first things that was ever brought up was that we would all be friends together before um before we became, it was about our relationship was just as important as my relationship with my husband. So that was really important.
Yeah.
And so we were friends, you know. It was a lot of times easier to have a relationship with the girls than it was to have a relationship with my husband, because my husband, I got jealous. I got jealous of the time he spent with other people. I got jealous of, you know, the feeling like my needs weren't met.
Hmm.
And so it's not an easy transition at all.
Yeah.
So I get married and I'm in a house with, we soon moved into a house in Linden, and we all moved together, which was going to be great. And then I get to try to figure out in my own brain how to manage that this man that I fell in love with comes home and there's other women
Yeah.
that I could make jealous, or they made me jealous, and I have to face that.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to react with him in a room full of other women. I
Yeah.
didn't know how to do that. And so I had to navigate that. And it was no easy task.
Yeah. Well, would you say that you learned to navigate that now, or do you feel like you're still learning that?
No, I navigate that now. That's not really an issue for me. I think more now, us girls get along so well and we have so much fun with each other that sometimes we leave him behind and he's like, hey, I'm here. And we're like, oh, you want to go with us? Because we'll go shopping, we'll go, we have a lot of grandkids that we, bring over to the house, and we tend and we do all these things, and we stay pretty busy.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes he's the one that's left out. It's not us,
Yeah.
and not that we're not really good friends with him. We are. We're really good friends. We all just go, and it's like a big bunch of friends hanging out. I don't really deal with a lot of jealousies like I did in the past. Not saying that I won't in the future.
Mhm.
But right now we all look out for each other. And if I feel like, hey, somebody needs to go out on a date, it's been a while, we bring that up to him and say, hey, you need to take so-and-so out on a date. It's been too long since she's been out. So
Gotcha.
we watch out for each other's backs.
Gotcha. Well, in a lot of ways, it sounds like wife number one really set the precedence and really set the dynamic of the family. Not so much your husband, not so much dad, but more so her kind of pressing for this is how I envision our family should be.
In a lot of ways, yes, but it was really the first and second wife that decided that they wanted to set that precedence. They wanted to
Okay.
be best friends. They were best friends. They wanted to stay
Well, they were
best
best
friends.
friends prior to them getting married.
Yes. And they wanted to stay best friends.
Hmm.
And they still went through their jealousies and all that. I mean, life is life. You're not going to run away from that.
Yeah.
But also, um, your dad really wanted to make sure that we were all happy. He took the effort to make sure each individual, if you were struggling, he didn't just say, well, it's your problem.
Hmm.
He took the time to really sit down and work out the issues, and care about each one of us.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find a man that's willing to do that, even in a monogamous situation, that he's willing to go sit down with his wife and say, can we talk this out?
Hmm.
Communication is big.
Huge. Huge. When wife number five first came in the picture, how was that dynamic?
That was really, really hard. Um, it was hard on all of us. The dynamic of when she came in was so different because we didn't get to know her first, but it was very separate from the rest of us. We
Hmm.
didn't really get to know her. And it was hard on all of us.
Yeah.
Um, she didn't really come over until one Thanksgiving Day when she came over. I believe it was Thanksgiving when she came over. And, all of us were working and trying to, and we were all a little emotional because we didn't know this woman who was going to marry our husband. So that was a real challenge. And she had her own house, and she was going to stay in her own house. So
Okay.
where was the opportunity to really get to know her?
So she had her own house before she came into the family.
Yes. And so we didn't know her really well. And
Yeah.
it was a struggle for all of us because she was like out there and we were all together as a unit. So it was challenging.
I can understand that for sure. Well, and I mean, that's why I grew up calling all of the moms mom because of the dynamic that you describe and how you guys are all best friends. Like I grew up looking at you all as mom. Obviously, you were OG mom, you were mom, but like I don't know. I looked at our family as one unit all growing
Right.
up because of that dynamic.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of why I want to be able to, I don't know, I feel like that's not something that's really given to women, is that they have a right to be friends and to have each other's back and to, you know, and if they need to tell their husband they're doing that wrong, you
Yeah.
know, and have the husband be able to be open-minded enough to say, you're right, I made a mistake.
All right. Well, let's pick this up again next week.